really keep in mind we are entering a period of extreme uncertainty. And with this much firepower dedicated in this region and direct U.S.
We're entering a period of extreme uncertainty. This is the calling card of Breaking Points. Everything is an extreme uncertainty. Welcome back. So people are saying they're getting a little freaked out watching Breaking Points because some of the rhetoric might be a little alarmist around Palestinian and Israel's conflict, because they do tend to be alarmist. They have a bias. It's a bias towards catastrophe, which is kind of unique. It's not laziness. It's everything is 1 minute to midnight. And the reason why I criticize Breaking Points is because I like them. I think they're one of the best digital news networks out there to watch. I think they're sincere, and I think their reporting is fairly accurate. So I criticize them with love. But they need to calm down with the hysteria.
Everyone needs to prepare themselves that the United States is this close from getting involved in this conflict, regardless of what these people say. President Biden, frankly, even setting the ground for that in his 60 Minutes interview, saying we can do both. We can have a conflict in the Middle East that embroils us with the world's petroleum supply. We can have a conflict happening in Ukraine, which is draining U.S. weapon stockpiles, because we're America, man. Here's what he had to say.
Are the wars in Israel and Ukraine more than the United States can take on at the same time?
We're the United States of America, for God's sake. The most powerful nation in the history, not in the world, in the history of the world. The history of the world. We can take care of both of these and still maintain our overall international defense.
We can take care of both of these and maintain our overall international defense. And Krystal, once upon a time, we may have believed that. Post-Iraq and post-Afghanistan, post-shipping ammo to Ukraine and depleting our weapon stockpiles, post-COVID finding out that we don't make anything in this country, that is just absolutely not true. There is a...
Whoa. It's absolutely not true that we cannot maintain two hypothetical conflicts, both of which don't see active U.S. military engagement. I think that's true. Actually, I'm inclined to agree with Biden, even though Biden's old school. But the United States can definitely handle multiple military fronts. We're the experts at it. We are the preeminent country at handling battles on multiple fronts. We can wage war in Afghanistan and Iraq at the same time. We can deal with Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos at the same time. We can deal with Nazi Germany and Japan at the same time. We can wage war across two different oceans at the same time. We're experts at it. So stationing some aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean Sea and giving Ukraine 5% of our budget, we can certainly do while maintaining our military readiness for whatever other conflict may be on the horizon. I don't know when he says we used to believe this, but then Iraq and Afghanistan proved the point. The United States can wage kinetic conflicts, and it doesn't really affect any of us unless you volunteered for the U.S. military or have a career in it. Most people went about their lives, and we don't make anything. What is he talking about? We make all the weapons. We make all the Abrams tanks, all the ATACMS missiles, all the Patriot missiles, all the fifth generation fighters. That's what everybody wants. We make those. In fact, Israel demands a military edge over any other geopolitical region, and the reason they're able to get that is because the United States provides it to them. We provide them a military edge. If we didn't provide it, Israel wouldn't have a quote-unquote military edge over, let's say, Saudi Arabia. A final point on this is that the American hegemony, my observation is, the American hegemony is often so large and so big to comprehend. The horizon of the American hegemony is so big that you can't actually see the end. And so sometimes it's easier to think, well, it can't actually be that big. There's no way the American hegemony is that large and that powerful because we can't see the horizon, you can't see the end point. But in point of fact, it really just is that big. The United States, as Biden said, is not only the large global superpower, it's the largest global superpower in history, and its dominance is just undeniable. And selling short this idea that the United States can't manufacture things or can't onshore things rapidly and quickly and doesn't have the industrial power to do so is ridiculous. I mean, even TSMC is onshoring their own microchip factories back in the United States. We make more natural gas than we know what to do with. We're a huge oil exporter. We still make cars. We still make weapons. We make most of the technology that runs the world. Facebook and other companies are laying the actual internet pipes down under the oceans in the world. We make a lot of stuff.
a very limited amount of military firepower that we have access to. Now, yes, that is far more than everybody else on the planet, but it is not infinite and endless as we once thought that it was.
Whoever thinks the U.S. military power is endless or infinite? As you said, is it more than all our enemies or competitors? Yeah. Well, conflicts are generally zero-sum games. So if you outlast your competitor both militarily and economically, that's all you really need to do, even if you're fighting on a multi-front battle.
For example, we are now committing extraordinary amounts of military resources to the Eastern Mediterranean. Let's put this up there on the screen. Unprecedented. The United States is now sending a second aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean. The USS Eisenhower will join the USS Ford off of Israel in the Eastern Mediterranean region. Secretary of Defense said that he would be moving to the Eastern Med, quote, as part of our effort to deter hostile actions against Israel or any efforts toward widening this war following Hamas's attack on Israel. This, of course, is meant to really be a deterrence against Iranian involvement, but something you talked about yesterday, and which again bears highlighting,
yes,
please
correct.
put this up there on the
He's
screen,
right.
is
Deter
a secret
Iranian
message has been communicated via Tehran to Tel Aviv. They warn Israel through the United Nations against a ground offensive in Gaza. What they said via the UN was this: if you go into Gaza in a full-scale invasion and a major offensive, and it results in mass civilian death, that Iran does not want to be in this conflict, it does not want to be into a regional war, but that they will have no choice. And they stressed, quote, Iran has red lines. He said that if the Israeli military operation continues, and especially if Israel follows through on its promise of a ground offensive, Iran will have to respond. That is almost certainly a threat of Hezbollah increasing involvement. Already, we have minor clashes that are happening in a possible two-front scenario. We could put this up there on the screen, confirmed by the Times of Israel. One person has already been killed in Israel in a renewed Hezbollah missile attack, and the IDF is heavily restricting the Lebanon border area, in addition to rocket fire and other things that are exchanged across both sides. That is the complete nightmare scenario. In signs of-
It's not a nightmare scenario. This is the alarmist take that Breaking Points is kind of known for, and it borderlines on the bias of catastrophe. It's kind of interesting. They don't really have a bias towards laziness. They have a bias towards alarmist. Everything is 1 minute to midnight. Everything is imminent danger. It reminds me a little bit about the people that would still freak out about COVID once we got a lock on what COVID was, what its death rate was, once we had vaccines, once we had Regeneron, once we had Paxlovid. The people that would still talk about, well, the imminent variations of COVID. It's just endlessly alarmist. That I think does a disservice to its audience, when a more laconic, calm take would be more informative. The fact that Israel is worried about a two-front opening to its north in Hezbollah, not surprising. Hezbollah doesn't like Israel, and they've been launching rockets north into Israel, and then Hamas in the south, in Gaza. But again, that doesn't necessarily lead to a larger global geopolitical conflict. I wouldn't be surprised if, when Israel, which seems inevitable, moves their ground forces into Gaza, do who knows what, although their strategic depth isn't that much, because they have to mobilize such a large percent of their population to get a army, an order of magnitude that would be considerate to like Russia or the United States. It actually eats into their economy, so they can't sustain that mobilization effort for very long without it costing their economic engine somewhat, because they have so many people mobilized compared to their total population. You know, when the United States mobilizes 300,000 people, the United States economy continued to churn. Same with Russia, theoretically. Israel, because Israel only has 9 million people, mobilizing 300,000, that's 5-6% of the population. That has a noticeable effect on the economy. And when those people aren't working jobs, the economy starts to go down. So Israel can only maintain their mobilization effort for X amount of time. They can be hyper efficient and effective, but their staying power isn't super long. They get gassed out. Otherwise, their economy starts to collapse a little bit. The point of this is really to say, well, yeah, Hezbollah might be likely to launch a lot of rockets into Israel, given the fact that Israel is invading Gaza. Again, the U.S. strike craft carriers, are there simply to prevent any other further escalations besides maybe Iran saying, all right, Hezbollah, you have the go-ahead, launch some rockets. That that's still within the circular bounds of predictable outcomes that, while not fantastic, don't mean total calamity that we should all be alarmed about.
Of even more widening conflict, for example, put this up there, just a couple of days ago, Israel bombed one of the major Aleppo airports in Syria and actually put it out of service because they said that it was the source of missile attacks, and has previously had simultaneous missile attacks by IDF forces, for example, in Damascus. All of this just shows us that you could easily have
the IDF is covering their bases. Aleppo, if anybody recalls, is kind of up there in Syria, and it was one of the very, very hotly contested areas in Syria between the Syrian rebels and ISIS and the Syrian government factions, and just endless chaos. And so it can be used as a staging ground again by ISIS or any sort of Islamic militant extremists, whether it's Hezbollah or some other, pick a weed that is the Islamic extremist branches. Could they launch something? Yes, IDF is just taking a preemptive action to knock that out. They're like, we don't want any planes or missiles coming from the Aleppo airport, so we're just going to bomb it. Is that great? No, but again, that's the rationale, the logical conclusion for why they're doing it.
A spiraling scenario where one wrong person is killed, and exactly as I've laid out before, if we get into a scenario where mass death happens inside Gaza, I'm talking 10 to 50,000, 50,000 to 100,000 civilians, then there is simply no scenario in my mind where Hezbollah and the regional actors do not get involved in some way.
Right.
Maybe, Krystal, they don't declare official war. It doesn't matter. These are non-state actors in and of itself. And you could have a flocking to Syria, to the borders all surrounding Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, where a call for global jihad happens, just like happened in ISIS. You'll have a swarming inside of the country, suicide bombers, all the other nightmare that we saw in Mosul and throughout the Islamic State. And there's, from the posture that we already have and the rhetoric in the United States, do you really not see how close we are right now to war with Iran or war with Hezbollah or U.S. getting involved even from...
Yeah, I really don't, despite the rhetoric of the childless, scaly old man that is Lindsey Graham and some other conservatives in Congress who just are war hawks to the end of their days and will probably be punished when they die in whatever afterlife they believe in. From my understanding, the strategic goals of the United States and Europe and even the Arab countries is not to prevent an escalation between non-state actors, like a global jihad where people are pouring into Lebanon, or Hezbollah getting involved, or Hamas getting involved in this kind of cluster of chaos that is around Israel. That's not actually the purpose. The purpose of the United States is to prevent state actors from getting involved. That you can have these intra-conflicts between non-state actors like Hezbollah and Hamas, and maybe some ISIS fighters join in, some Muslim Brotherhood, whatever. It doesn't matter. That's not the goal. The real concern is state actors getting involved. You have the dominoes where suddenly Saudi Arabia feels like they need to do something. Egypt needs to do something. Jordan, and then Tehran, Iran has to do something. That's the big problem, but I don't see it as a big concern. I don't think we're anywhere close to that. The two strike carriers are there to prevent state actors from getting involved. There's no way to prevent non-state actors like Hezbollah getting involved, and them getting involved is not going to automatically escalate to some sort of catastrophic nuclear World War III, big world power changing war. It's not going to happen.
From a air perspective, don't forget what happened in Libya. And the thing is that, let's say even if we do avoid a war with Iran, well, our intervention with Libya was no peach. It ended up the destruction of the entire country. We could see regimes toppled even by this.
Yeah.
If they, work with the U.S.
Right. Libya was a disaster. I mean, it was the intervention. This is why Obama actually didn't want to really do it. I mean, he was pilloried for the comment lead from behind, because he said, okay, United States will back you, Europe, but we'll lead from behind. France, this is important to you. You're across the Mediterranean Sea. You take the lead. And it resulted with predictable consequences that Libya had a very tenuous government by Gaddafi. We obliterated Gaddafi's government, and it fell into factional fighting between different sectarian groups, and there's basically a non-state state. But again, that doesn't have so much to do with what's occurring in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. There is not a deep concern that a bunch of state actors are going to get involved, not only because the United States is stationing aircraft carriers to make sure that doesn't happen, but because the Arab countries themselves, I'll pull up a map, we can go through it, they don't particularly want to get involved either. They may posture, they may have rhetoric to say they might have to get involved, but that's because they need to be responsive to their own populations. But the governments, the Arab governments themselves, are not interested in getting involved. And I'll pull up a map, I'll demonstrate. We'll go through maybe what some of these countries are actually thinking.
Going to face major pushback from their own populations. If they declare war, they could, end themselves up in a problem. Who knows the level of destabilization that could enter this? So I think everyone needs to really keep in mind we are entering a period of extreme uncertainty, and with this much firepower dedicated in this region and direct U.S.
We're entering a period of extreme uncertainty. This is the calling card of breaking points. Everything is an extreme uncertainty. Every little provocation or escalation between Ukraine and Russia, we're entering a period of extreme danger. Russia's going to break out the nukes. We don't know. They annexed Zaporizhia. We shouldn't be supplying. It never happens. It doesn't happen. The statistical likelihood of domino effect state actors causing imminent destruction that we should be concerned about here in the United States is actually very small. And this strikes me again as quite alarmist. Alarmist and catastrophizing and doing a disservice to the audience in a more calm, logical delivery. It's just alarmist when it does not need to be.
Backing for whatever happens, we could easily find ourselves in this conflict. Days from now, easily, it could happen.
No, not easily, not days from now. What I would love to hear the logical projection of how the United States would get involved directly within days. Israel invades Gaza, lays waste to Gaza, turns Gaza into Miami Beach. Hezbollah doesn't like that. Iran says, okay, Hezbollah, launch rockets. The most, I think most people could imagine, is that the aircraft carriers obliterate Hezbollah. Bye-bye, Hezbollah. That can be done. Beyond that, what's going to happen? What could easily occur to cause a catastrophe? Let's pull up a map of the Gulf states here. So here we have a map of the region. And we see over here, Israel, West Bank, Gaza Strip. So Israel's amassed their army, and they're going to go into the Gaza Strip. And they're worried about, Lebanon, Hezbollah over here firing some rockets, getting involved on Israel's north flank. But what are the realities? Well, one of the corridors, the exits that people have talked about so frequently in the news, is that theoretically people from Gaza can get out and escape into Egypt, but Egypt is blocking that route. Why is Egypt blocking that route? It's because Egypt doesn't really want to deal with Hamas or the Palestinians either. The Egyptian populace is sympathetic to the Palestinians' plight, but the Egyptian government doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So they're blocking it. They're thinking, that's chaos. In fact, Egypt, when they toppled their initial dictator and they had elections, they elected the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a sibling of Hamas, and they thought, oh no, this is a disaster, so they had to have another military coup. Sisi came in, they got rid of the Muslim Brotherhood, tried to put a lid back on the kind of Islamic extremists. So Egypt definitely doesn't want to let any hint of Hamas back into their border. That's why they're keeping the border closed with Gaza. So Egypt, their population might be sympathetic to Palestine, and Egypt is going to have to pay lip service to the population, but the Egyptian government doesn't want anything to do with it. They don't want it to escalate. Same with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's population is sympathetic to the Palestinians, but the Saudi Arabian government, again, doesn't want to have anything to do with it. They're already fighting conflict down here in Yemen, proxy war with Iran in their south. They're right next to Iran here. They don't want to do any damage with the Strait of Hormuz, so that's where their oil goes through. So the last thing they want to do is, Mohammed bin Sawbone, or whatever you want to call him, he's building his grand city Neom. He's spending billions of dollars. It's up here in the north. The last thing the Saudi Arabian government wants to do is they already have an ongoing conflict with Iran in the south. They're worried about the Strait of Hormuz. The last thing they want to do is get involved in the north and have a three-front conflict. So again, the Saudi Arabian government, they got to pay lip service because their people are passionate, and there's a lot of clerics that are going to be sermonizing about, defend Palestine. But the Saudi government has every incentive to not get involved. They do not want another front opened on their north, whether Palestinians coming in and flooding and causing chaos, what have you. So Saudi Arabia is very unlikely to get involved, just as Egypt. Same with Jordan. Jordan has no military. They're really trying to boost their tourism with some ancient artifacts. They don't want to get involved. Iran could get involved, but they don't have the military projection to get involved. The best they can do is unleash Hezbollah, say, Hezbollah, go for it, which is why the United States aircraft carriers are stationed out there. In case Iran says, go for it, Hezbollah, Hezbollah launches some rockets, the United States just ends Hezbollah. That's the most the conflict can really escalate to. Logically, I don't see many people with authority speaking on the matter that could see a domino effect escalating. There's not a 1 minute to midnight situation here for the United States or for people watching Breaking Points. For people in Palestine, yeah, 100%. For people in Israel, yeah, 100%. It's a bad situation. But this alarmist rhetoric is inaccurate. Hopefully this map gives you a little bit better context for why we're unlikely to see an escalation of state actors in any sort of World War I escalation domino effect.
You're going to hear some of this when we play for you our focus group.
Mm-hmm.
The American people, very, very sympathetic to Israel and what they're going for, and mostly behind their actions in Gaza. Very different question when you ask about, do you support us getting more directly involved? And very different question if you're talking about an active hot war with Iran. And I don't think anyone should delude themselves about what a chaotic and dangerous situation that we're in right now. I thought Dr. Parsi had a good thread.
Chaotic and dangerous situation we're in? Not really. The United States, we're not in a dangerous and chaotic situation. The Middle East is a dangerous and chaotic situation for those living in the Middle East, particularly around the Levant area.
About how even though it appears that none of the three parties, Iran, Israel, or the U.S., actually wants to go to war, even that being the case, there is still a very real possibility that we end up in one in spite of that because of the actions that the three parties are taking. In particular, he says Israeli success in Gaza will give Israel freer hands to go after Hezbollah. Hezbollah may not be able to prevent an Israeli victory, but it will have a compelling interest to turn it Pyrrhic, and by that, make it too costly for Israel to extend it into Lebanon. So the idea being, if Israel is too brutal in Gaza, Hezbollah will feel compelled to get more directly involved. You're already seeing this sporadic fighting as it is. Hezbollah's involvement in turn will bring Iran much more directly into the conflict. Iran's foreign minister has warned that unless Israel stops its attacks, the war will be widened and Israel will suffer, quote, a huge earthquake. Those are the comments that we were mentioning.
Right, this is what Iran's saying, but let's follow this logically. Israel invades Gaza. They do enormous damage. This angers Hezbollah. Hezbollah goes in on the north side of Israel. Okay, then there's some pushback. Israel fights Hezbollah. And then Iran gets involved. They have no power projection. How are they going to get involved? They can't, besides bang some pots and pans and wave the Quran around.
Before, Iran and Hezbollah's involvement will pressure Biden to intervene despite clear U.S. interest in staying out. There is little in Biden's conduct that suggests he will prioritize America's long-term strategic interest over what is politically expedient for him in the immediate term. Direct American military intervention in Gaza or against Hezbollah and Iran is all but certain to generate major attacks against U.S. troops throughout the Middle East. So that's the chain of escalation that could quickly get out of hand based on the actions that all three of these parties are already taking in the region.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so from my understanding, they're saying Israel invades Gaza. Gaza causes an escalation where then Hezbollah invades Israel. Then the United States gets involved with Hezbollah. Then Iran gets involved and attacks some embassies, and the U.S. embassy in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, they become an issue. But each of the Arab states, besides Iran, really have all incentive to look the other way. The governments do. and they need to pay lip service to their publics who don't want them to look the other way. So they're going to say, we're not looking the other way, we care, we care, we care. But each Arab government wants to stay in power. And they're worried any sort of chaos would cause their power to topple. The Arab governments are not exactly secure.
Exactly. And just to again underscore about what I was talking about previously with respect to Anthony Blinken and how he has been badly received in the Middle East, we are realigning old adversaries towards each other who are united against us and against Israel by proxy. Put this up there on the screen. For example, Iran's president and the Saudi Crown Prince, MBS, spoke for the very first time ever in history. That did not happen as a result of U.S. diplomacy trying to get Saudi Israel. Instead, we realigned the two of them where they agreed on a call to watch what currently happens in the Gaza Strip and to come out against Israeli airstrikes. Just to give people an example of how these governments will be either forced by their own policy or by their people to respond to the actions that are inside, and which will absolutely impact U.S. policy, U.S. troops, even if we don't.
No, it will not absolutely impact U.S. troops. Precision of language. This is alarmist and catastrophizing in a way that I think is heavily biased towards the kind of imminent immediacy of danger. Like, pay attention, watch, quick. Everything is important. We're on the precipice of something cataclysmic happening. That's definitely Breaking Point's bias, and it's kind of disappointing because I like them so much. But no different than CNN. Just because they have a chyron that says breaking news doesn't mean everything is breaking news. Just because Breaking Points says everything is imminent danger, whether it's Ukraine and Russia or Palestine and Israel, doesn't actually mean we're in imminent danger.
End up in a actual nation-state war. It's a nightmare enough to be involved with nation-state actors. Ask anybody who fought against ISIS or AQI or any of those others inside of Iraq. And it just means more instability, more chaos, more likelihood of a domestic terror attack here at home, which then invites more foreign intervention abroad. All of these are parts of a very, very vicious cycle of which there absolutely is a major, major risk right now ahead. And it's clear that the U.S. Policymakers...
It sounds compelling. It sounds major, major risk. Things are going to get out of control. But people are moving the chess pieces in strategic positions to deliberately contain it. Again, circling all the way back to that kind of poor metaphor of everybody who feels an obligation to maybe get involved. Don't get involved. Remember, we're going to act as a referee. Let the fight. The fight's just between Gaza and Israel. Is it going to be bloody? Is it going to be gruesome? Yeah, but nobody else get involved. Everybody out of the ring. Let it happen. I think that's what we're going to watch. Is that morally correct? I'll let you decide. But in terms of imminent catastrophe, danger, it's just alarmist. I know I'm saying that a lot, but they tend to be alarmist a lot.
Are either too inept or don't care or are, I guess, desirable for this sort of outcome based upon the entire bipartisan system that in the way it's operating right now. Anyway, you teased our focus group and how voters are thinking about this. We've got James.
All right, that's the end of the video. I like Breaking Points. I think they're a great news channel, news organization. The reason why I criticize them is because a bias I see propping up again and again is this kind of alarmist attitude that isn't accurate. It's just not accurate to the reality of the situation as we saw on the map and the various state actors and their incentives to get involved or not get involved, and how they're managing both their domestic policies back home, paying lip service to the people that have sympathies with Palestine, while at the same time maneuvering in a way to keep themselves out of the conflict directly because they don't want to lose power themselves. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you found this slightly more informative or additionally useful in understanding what's going on in the conflict. Hopefully this is not a video about politics. This is a video about media and how media covers politics, specifically geopolitics, in particular Breaking Points. Thank you for watching this video. Like, subscribe, dislike this video, like the video anyway. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Bye.